Hello and welcome to another lockdown edition of the Sheffield Hopcast. I believe it's June now. I'm not sure how that's happened. I'm demanding a recount on that one, but I think we are officially into June. If you're watching the video of this, you will spot our guest this week is Lucy. Now, anyone who is a regular at Shakespeares at Kelham Island will know Lucy very well, and this is actually, I think this is your third appearance on the Hopcast, all in all. So we'll chat to Lucy in a bit. In the spirit of her appearance, our theme this week is quite simply women and beer, and kind of interpreting that however we wish. I should mention, before we meet the full crew, a bit later on, we will be revealing the dates and times of our Sheffield Hop Fest sessions, and each of the four of us will be revealing the theme for our individual sessions. This is unless Sean has forgot and not prepared his. Odds of that around 3-1 on at this moment in time, but we'll find out fully later on. But let's go to Sean first for his beer selection for this evening.
Do you want the story as well straight away, or are we going to do a reflection? Do you just want the beer, or shall I go for it?
No, go for it.
Okay.
Tell us all.
This may be no surprise to a fair number of people, but Jaipur, of course, is celebrating a birthday today. It's 15-year-olds today, and I've seen lots of people online enjoying a Jaipur this afternoon on Twitter, particularly to celebrate its birthday. The double whammy reason why I'm going to drink Jaipur, in fact, I really should just have a pint of Jaipur. So I brought 2 cans. I'm not having just a small can. But is also to give a nod and to celebrate our theme of women and beer, because back in 2011, 2012, before we had a beer shop, and while I was still teaching, one April I went to the snooker with my father-in-law, Tommy, who worked for us at the shop for a couple of years. And we went for pre-snooker drinks in Sheffield Tap. It was as ever incredibly busy when we were in tea time. I think it was a Thursday or Friday night, something like that. It was rammed. We went and bought a pint each of Jaipur from the bar. At that point back then, we were regulars at Rotherham Real Ale and Music Beer Festival, Doncaster Beer Festival, Barnsley Beer Festival, camera run events, and Jaipur was a beer that we used to hunt out and really celebrate if we could find it. In Sheffield Tap that night, it was really busy. There were a couple of spare seats at a table that 2 ladies who sat at, and me and Tommy cheekily asked if we could pinch the 2 seats on the table, and they said, yeah, of course, come and sit down and have a sit down on this table. And we got our pints of Jaipur, and one of them asked what we were drinking, and we said it was Jaipur. And she said, oh, that's good, I work for Thornbridge, so that's very kind that you bought our beer and you've come to sit and enjoy it at our table. And we got chatting, and it was Stacey from Thornbridge, Stacey Webster, who subsequently turned out to be sales manager at Thornbridge at the time. She was very kind to us. I explained that I liked Wild Raven while I was having a chat with her, and she gave me a card and told me to email her, and organised for me to pick up a mini keg of Wild Raven the following week from Sheffield Tap. And I was really looked after, and that was my first real contact with anyone, any employee working for a modern day brewery. And I was a bit starstruck. I dropped an email to her. She replied, and it was one of these things that, oh my goodness, I'm dealing with someone here at a brewery that I really like. And that did make a real impression on me. And I still see Stacey now and again. She calls in the market sometimes, and we often have a quick natter about that night. But that really got me even further into modern day beers, and was my first ever link up with anyone working for a brewery at the time. I knew Dave Broadhead from Acorn because I sit next to him at the Barnsley matches. But this was the first time beyond that. And Stacey is someone that sort of planted perhaps the idea that modern craft beer could be a very friendly and exciting place. And so happy birthday, Jaipur. Thanks again, Stacey. And I think that's probably my longest explanation so far for of a beer. But I thought it was a story worth telling and something I wanted to thank people for.
Great stuff. Thank you, Sean. Unfortunately, we are now out of time, so we're not going to have a chance to speak to anyone else, but thank you for joining. Right then, let's go to, if anyone there, I was distracted during that because I kept glancing down to see Laura's cat prowling across her kitchen in the background, which has now become a regular feature on the Hopcast. I enjoy it very much. So let's go to Laura next.
Yeah, I keep hearing him and I don't really know what he's doing, so it's a little bit concerning, but he just does his own thing. Well, just to tie in with what Sean was just saying about Thornbridge, I'm wearing my Peakender t-shirt, which is my little nod to Jaipur's birthday as well. I do own a Jaipur bobble hat, but could not bring myself to put that on in June. So I've gone for the Peakender t-shirt. My beer is a brewery that I don't think we see in Sheffield very often. It's a passion fruit and raspberry goes from Canopy Brewery, who were based down in London. And they're owned by a really lovely woman called Estelle, who I met at the International Women's Brew Day that I went to at Cloudwater last year. And it was kind of the first time that I'd really heard of Canopy. But I spotted this in Turner's a few weeks ago and thought it'd be a perfect fit with the theme. I absolutely love this little on the can. On their website, they've got a little like a little game you can play where you can scroll through and make your own little creature. So they work with local artists to come up with those. Yes, beer I haven't tried before, but sounds right up my street. So looking forward to trying it.
That is an awesome can. I love it. Brilliant. Right, cool. I'll tell you about my beer then. So my beer comes from, courtesy of Sean, from Ashover Brewery. Of course, their head brewer is Janine. We've talked about her a few times on the Hopcast before. Now, the beer is called, I'll move that a little bit closer, it's called Hawaiian Shirt. And there is a story to tell here. I'm going to have to grab my notes so I can make sure I give you the correct information on this. So it's called Hawaiian Shirt because they hold an annual event called Hawaiian Shirt Day. Now, this is all linked to Roy, who is Janine's dad and one of the founders of the brewery. He is well known for wearing a Hawaiian shirt 365 days a year, just like my uncle who lives in Dubai. He does that as well. Now, it started off, they had a Facebook group kind of in appreciation of Roy and his shirt, and that turned into an event, like an appreciation event. The first one, there was about 20 people that attended at the Arkwright Arms, which is between Chesterfield and Bolsover. It's actually run by Roy's other daughter, Kathy, and is quite well known for being a good real ale boozer. It quickly became an annual event. It's normally held in early July, and has got a great reputation as being a real fun event. Now, obviously, this year it's not going to be able to go ahead. So what they're kind of doing is they're going to move it kind of like to a bit of a virtual thing and just get people to share a beer and wear something loud. This causes me an issue because I don't actually own an Hawaiian shirt. So what I've done is just worn the loudest hoodie that I've got that's got a big rainbow flag on it. And hang on a second. I have a Hawaiian cap, which is the nearest that I can come up with, which is actually like fully in the style of a Hawaiian shirt. So there we go. In terms of the actual beer itself, it's described as a fruity session pale, 3.7%. And considering that I've got to be up at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, that is a perfect ABV to be having this time on Sunday. So that is mine. I think it's a cracking story behind it. And Ashover, I think, have got a reputation for making really good, solid beers that do exactly what they're supposed to do. So looking forward to opening that. Right, I'll hand over to Adam.
Or Barry. Is it Adam or Barry?
No, you're still Adam.
A few months ago, when we did the Women's Institute special, we featured one of this brewery, and I managed to find the actual beer, which was featured in an article we talked about in the Independent, which was talking about best beers brewed by women to enjoy this International Women's Day back in March. And I managed to find the beer that they're referencing. We didn't have it in the other episode, but I have got it now, and it's Wiper and True Milkshake Stout, 5.6%. I believe one of their brew team, the female brew team, but they did one of the International Women's Day collaborations in 2018 as well. So they do quite a big presence in pushing women in beer. So I thought I'd give them a shout out again today.
Have you had it before?
I've had incarnations of their kind of milk stouts, but I know they've had like quite strong one, like 10% ones as well, and they've done quite. So I'm not sure if I've actually had this exact one before.
I've seen it in a couple of places. It'd be interesting to see what you make of it. Actually, that one would be good. I've had to turn my cap around because I just can't wear baseball caps for ways brown. They look weird. Right then, over to Lucy. Now, I mean, you are a woman in beer, so you can pretty much pick whatever you want. But what is your beer choice for this evening?
So on that note, due to not a lot of notice, one of the women involved in brewing this beer is actually me. So I bought Calabracadabra, which is an apricot braggot, and it was the beer itself was a brainchild of Hannah from Neep's End. It was brewed at Steel City at Lost Industry, and Abbeydale and Blue Bee came along with us as well. And honestly, it's absolutely delicious. But yeah, I wanted to bring something local, shout about some local women, not myself, Hannah. And yeah, that's what I've got.
I think it's brilliant that you brought a beer that you had a hand in brewing yourself. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't want to like, oh, it's me.
I think that's incredibly impressive. And what was the style again?
It's a braggot,
right.
So it's honey based, and it's got a nice little sort of wheaty note on it, and it's in true Steel City style. It's 6.66%. But it drinks like about 2.5% because the honey in it's so smooth. It's absolutely delightful. This was supposed to be for my dad, so sorry, Dad.
I was just thinking, Lucy, like you recently did a bit of like a tour of brewing in different places, didn't you? So I wonder if you hold a weird niche record for woman who's brewed in most places in the shortest amount of time who isn't an actual brewer.
Yeah, I did 13 breweries in 1 month and 2 days, and was very tired at the end of it because I was also doing 40 hours at the pub. So yeah, it very nearly killed me, but the event at the end was all worth it. It was really good.
How long have you had the can, Lucy?
That's a secret. It was dropped off the day it was canned.
All right, yeah, very good. So I knew Dave was going into can with those, but I didn't know what.
Yeah. And on the plus side, it's when you crack it, it's so full that the beer immediately starts to push its way out of the top. There's no underfilling going on here.
That is value for money, isn't it? I love that. So, Lucy, what's your kind of lockdown experience been like?
I mean, as with everybody's, I think, very surreal. Obviously, with my line of work being in a pub, I haven't been working at all. The decision was taken for us that we weren't going to be doing takeaway, things like that. And I've had a job since I was 14, and this is the longest I've ever not worked. And I'm trying not to enjoy it too much, but but yeah, just very odd, really.
And what have your beer consumption levels been like through it all?
I mean, we this house is a house of bartenders, the 4 of us. So we've been lucky enough to get our hands on quite a lot of casks, and we have a handful attached to the kitchen table. So that's been a contributing factor. And between us, we've all been stocking up. We've been going to Orchard Road a fair bit. We've got a couple of bits from Abbeydale and things like that. But we do drink less than when the pubs are open because none of us can stay awake past 11.
Social distance party round at Lucy's then.
Social distance party, yeah.
We could all pile into the garden, and you could just like fetch. There's four of you. You used to like take it in turns as to who goes in to pour the next round of drinks. That's a cracking
We'd
plan.
fight for it because we all miss pouring pints. It's like, no, I'll get these.
Was the hand pump there beforehand, or was this like a special feature for lockdown?
No, this has been a fixture.
I love that. That's fantastic. That's brilliant. I feel like I should have known that anyway. I love that. That's brilliant.
Lucy, who are the pubs that are represented in your household? And who's the team?
So we've got the two Adams from the Crow, and Sam Byrne, who used to be at Shakespeares and has since gone to the Lescar via Booze Hound, and all of us very beery people. Our mantelpiece is a ridiculous spectacle of beer.
And who's top drinker? You must be top drinker then, listening to those.
Not with Adam in the house now.
Sure. Were you saying that? Is it the Crow's birthday coming up?
It was yesterday, I think, or the day before yesterday. So 1 year old. So they celebrated that online with a few different posts, and I think they've got a sharing event that they've done in collaboration with Rich and Laura at Archer Road. I think they've got some taster bottle event lined up anyway.
Oh, good stuff. That's good. It's kind of weird that, because I kind of think it doesn't feel like a year since we were there. Just before it opened, they were still kind of doing the finishing touches, like the toilets weren't quite finished. There was half a bar in and stuff like that when we went to record an episode. And that doesn't feel like a year ago. And yet, at the same time, it feels like a pub that's been part of the beer scene forever now. It just feels like, I think probably the second time you walk in that pub, it feels like you've just been in there hundreds of times. It's very strange, odd feeling that it's only a year old. What about Shakespeare's then, Lucy? Obviously, you said that the decision was made not to kind of do takeaway. Have you been back in the pub at all at any point? It's one of those pubs that I've been trying to get my head around the idea of, would social distancing work in there? I mean, it's always you walk in, it's always a bit of a scrum at the bar, isn't it, at Shakespeare's?
We have some plans, but we've not totally worked it out. I've been completely furloughed, so really can't do anything, which has been, well, it started off incredibly frustrating, but I managed to level out the frustration after a while. I popped in because I went to get some takeout from Kellam Island Tavern, and as I was passing, I went and watered the plants, and that's been my input for the last however long lockdown's been now.
Cool. Good stuff. Good stuff.
It's starting to feel like properly a long time as well, isn't it? I think now that we've crossed into June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just on a totally personal level, apart from whether we should be going back and when, just from a personal level, I really can't wait to go back to work. It's just going to be a very interesting time as to how that can happen and what we do to make it possible.
I think that because there's been so many breweries and obviously other industries as well that have kind of managed to come up with all kind of crazy schemes to make things work, and I have hope that that a similar kind of thing will happen with pubs, and the public seem quite happy to accept things that are quite different to the norm and things like that. So I hope that there is space for all sorts of weird and wonderful ideas to spring up in response and make it work again. So yeah. There's a decent sized beer garden at Shakespeares and things, isn't there?
Yeah, if it is a case where they open beer gardens first, we are quite lucky in that. Access points will be a different thing, but in terms of just the outdoor space, we're going to be one of the lucky ones there.
I suppose you've got the upstairs as well, which you've kind of utilised for beer festivals, and it's maybe how you
use that as a
makeshift second bar.
Pub, so we've got space on our side.
And I guess the upstairs as well, there's kind of, you could have like a one-way thing, couldn't you? Because there's a separate kind of up and then down by like the fire escape bit. So I guess that could...
Yeah, we've basically what we need is to walk around the pub with a tape measure, some black and yellow tape, and hopefully some ideas.
Feels really weird at the moment, doesn't it, with pubs and stuff, because everything else is kind of slowly reopening, and yet pubs have not particularly kind of been talked about very much. It doesn't feel like it's sort of imminent, and it's just lingering a bit. I can understand how anyone that works in a pub, but particularly people that kind of own and run pubs, how it must be quite frustrated at the moment seeing everything else kind of slowly churning back into life, and yet the pub scene just kind of sat there, isn't it? It still feels like it's just on hold, and that's mega frustrating, particularly for pubs that you'd look at and think, well, actually, they probably could kind of make a few changes and reopen quite quickly and, hopefully quite safely, I guess.
Yeah, it's just a balancing act. I think it's going to be how to make it possible, viable, and safe. But it's definitely something that I think can be done as and when the time is right.
I went into my first pub. I went into a pub on Friday. Went to collect some pre-ordered, pre-mixed cocktails from Dead Donkey, who were doing a takeaway and delivery service. But I went in, and obviously there was like, counters before you went in so that you could sanitize your hands and everything, and then the floor was all clearly marked out, really, really well thought through. And I was kind of in there like, smells amazing in here. Like, what is that smell? And they were like, it's literally just pub smell. I was like, so much.
I think you say it's clean. It's like
we've got loads of like oak paneling and leather furniture and things in there, so it just had this really nice like it's like, it was really kind of like fresh, leathery, lovely. I don't know how to describe it. It was just great pub smell.
Sounds like you're describing a nice imperial stout, Laura. Actually.
Leathery. I've still got pilloway on my board actually as one of my favourite words. I find Dead Donkey. I moved at the beginning of March, and Dead Donkey became one of my new locals. And very frustratingly, I only managed to go in once before it shut down, which was really annoying because that's kind of part of that bit of Abbeydale Road that's sort of come to life in the last year and a half, and it's really frustrating kind of living just around the corner and everything being shut. So yeah, sorry Sean, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask Lucy. I know a few pub people have mentioned that the 4th of July is going to be a key date in terms of how pubs are going to reopen. As you understand it, is that the date that they will announce how pubs will reopen, or will they announce that beforehand, and 4th of July might be the first date that people get a chance to reopen?
I mean, I'm a little cautious to sort of say, just in case we start getting queues and things, but I know friends of mine that work for big pubcos have essentially been told, as of anymore, unless anything changes drastically, they can expect to be at work then.
So they'll announce beforehand.
And I'm rather expecting that I might be the same, depending.
Yeah.
How do we all feel about going back to the pub? I know, obviously, we love our beer, so the theory of getting back to the pub is great. But I think for all of us, it comes with a little bit of, I don't know, trepidation, I guess. I don't know. It's quite weird, the thought of it now, isn't it? 'Cause it's not, for a long time, it's not quite going to be the same experience, because you think about things like going to the toilet, kind of like, how stuff like that will work, particularly, Adam, Sean, I guess for us it's a bit different because the fact that, in the men's toilets is kind of, you get several guys just kind of squeezed in together, and the idea of, socially distancing at a urinal and having a whole trough to yourself and stuff like that now it's kind of a weird thought, isn't it? Thinking that could be in the space of a month we could be back in a pub.
Yeah, I think coming from somewhere where it doesn't really personally affect me from a work point of view, but it feels premature to me, along with a lot of things. I've got to juggle my girl going back to school next week. That feels premature, but I don't know. I suppose we'll see. I mean, I think even this first bit of relaxing of anything has just made people start bending the rules. I met somebody in Endcliffe Park last week just to say hello. And that was disgusting, how many people were just not baying anything at all. Police car by the side of the road, I reckon there were a group of 150 people all got together and no one's did a single thing. So I think it's just gonna, people are so desperate to go back to this normality that I just think people are just gonna start ignoring it. and then we'll end up in the same situation again. I think.
I'm not worried about me going back to the pub. I'm worried about a lot of other people in the general public pushing into me at supermarkets and coughing near me in the street going back to the pubs. I think we all need to be kind of seeing a level of individual responsibility, and you have to trust each other that people are going to behave responsibly, but at the same time you can only control your own behavior. So I know that I will wash my hands and stay a safe distance apart and not go anywhere if I feel unwell, but there's only me that I can kind of say that for. And I think that's the thing that is a bit more unknown and a bit more off-putting, really, if that makes sense.
I'm not sure if it was Michael or Heather who mentioned it last week about it's fine for like city centres pubs to start reopening, but is there going to be people there to populate them? I mean, my work, for example, don't think we'll even consider going back until August, and they said even at that point it'll be based on if you feel comfortable, because basically we can work at home and we've worked it out over 3 months. So it makes you wonder how many people will go back to a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 office-based job, and if that's me being in town 3 days a week rather than 5 days a week, that's at least one or two times every so often that I'm not going to be popping for a pint after work. So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds as well.
It's weird as well, isn't it? Because
I think
routines have
once
kind of
pubs
gone.
do reopen.
Sorry, Lucy.
That's all right. No, I've just said that once pubs do reopen, I mean, people queued for how many hours to go to KFC? Like,
That's true.
People haven't had a pub for 4 months. I don't think populating them is going to be the issue. I think
No, you're probably right.
Containment is probably more the problem.
Yeah.
I wonder, I agree with what Laura said there regarding that worry about kind of other people and how they behave, because I think we're already kind of seeing that there's a huge issue with sort of this divide in society at the moment between people that are still taking this very seriously and social distancing, and people that seem to have just kind of forgotten all about that and just tossed it off and are just doing whatever they want. And if that does kind of roll into pubs and potentially indoor environments like that, then I think we're going to see this divide. And it could be that there's a divide within pubs, pubs that are very vocal in terms of saying, we are strictly adhering to social distancing, and maybe pubs that are a little bit more sort of lax about it, that, it might divide kind of who goes to which pub based on, how vocal they are about the rules and things that they've got in place. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds. But I'm a little bit with Adam in terms of the fact that it does, the idea that, less than a month's time back in pubs, kids going back to school, stuff reopening when it's just doesn't feel like we're on top of this thing yet. But I guess we're strayed a bit into politics there, which is not particularly what we're here for. Sean, how's your Jaipur going down?
Superbly, yeah. In my early days drinking, I preferred Thornbridge beers, that is, drinking Thornbridge beers. I preferred Kipling, and I preferred Wild Raven, the black IPA in particular. But I thought, with it being Jaipur's birthday, and that was the drink I was drinking when I met her, Stacey, and I thought that made a relevant link up. I was a drinker that was a bit starry-eyed at the time in terms of I was dealing direct with a brewery. And so it's something that stayed with me for some time. So good as ever. I'm not in agreement with a lot of people who go on about, it's changed, the recipe's changed. I've always had that lovely little hoppy sherbetiness from Jaipur, and I've grown to like it much more now as compared to what I used to think of it before, in relation to comparing it with Kipling particularly. I prefer this to Kipling now, whereas I used to prefer Kipling to this. Changed my mind.
Completely
I've
agree.
not had Kipling for ages. Feels like years since I drank Kipling. Yonks, real long time.
They struggled to source enough Nelson Sauvin for it, and so Krackendale, I think, was brewed the Citra, single hop Citra Pale to sort of help the lack of Kipling. But I think they're still brewing it maybe once, twice a year. But Nelson Sauvin is the problem on that.
Adam, what's the milkshake stout? Does it meet the expectations?
Yeah, it's really nice actually. There's not much quite low carbonation, quite chocolatey, kind of vanilla, kind of lactose flavour to it. Really smooth, especially because it can. Sometimes I'm a bit funny with kind of straight out of the fridge as well, which I should have probably brought it out a bit earlier, but I think probably the lack of carbonation helps it a little bit, because I sometimes feel like you lose the flavour for the dark beers if they're a bit fizzy. But yeah, it's really good.
Good stuff. It looks good. Laura, I've been eyeing up the colour of your beer is fantastic. So the can's brilliant, the colour's great. What's the beer like?
It's really lovely. It's like raspberry coulis. It's got that really nice, like, zingy, tip of your tongue, sherbety thing going on. Yeah, really, really nice. It's probably because it's a goes as well, and the last few gozes I've had, I've picked up on the salt quite prominently, but this feels a little bit better balanced. It doesn't feel salty, but yeah, it's really nice. Also, just to say, before you talk about your beer, James, I've been contributing to a future Ash Over beer today, just to tie in with what you're drinking. It's the annual elderflower foraging day for Ashover's elderflower pale ale, which is one of my absolute favourite beers. Loved it for many a moon. Yeah, went out today, went for a little bit of a drive and stopped everywhere we could spot a little bit of elderflower on the way between here and the brewery in Claycross, and dropped a bag of flowers off at the brewery for Janine to brew with tomorrow. So I'll be looking out for that when it's released as well.
It was almost like we planned that. That was great. Incidentally, good use of the word zingy. I'm going to add that onto my board because that was good. I was impressed with that. Lucy, what's yours like?
It's a delight. Yeah, it's just there was a fairly ridiculous amount of honey went into this, and then the apricot in it just sort of puts a little, almost not a tartness, but like a nice sharpness to it, so it's not overwhelmingly sweet, because I have no sweet tooth. So for me, it's just like the balance on it's perfect. It's not sort of over the top. It's subtle almost, which is not something you might necessarily expect from a 6.6% braggart, but it's got quite a delicacy to it.
Sounds lovely, really good. Can I just get hold of a can of that? The Hawaiian Shirt. It's very nice actually for 3.7. Plenty of flavour going on. It's got a bit of bitterness there, but very, very nice. It tastes really sessionable. It tastes like something you can drink and just enjoy the experience of drinking it without worrying about how boozy or anything like that it is. So yeah, very impressed. Right, let's talk about the first ever Sheffield Hop Fest. We talked very briefly about this at the end of last week's episode. We've already got a few people who are on the guest list, don't know what we'd call it, but we can reveal a few more details now. So it's like less than 2 weeks away now. It's coming around ever so fast. So the weekend of the 19th, 20th and 21st of June is going to be the first Sheffield Hop Fest. So a little bit like this, what we do with our weekly episodes, we're going to do 4 over the weekend, but rather than having one guest on, we're going to have loads. So each of us is going to host a session / episode, which we will live stream as well, so you'll be able to watch it as it's happening. And we're going to get as many guests along as we can to come along and share a beer with us, chat about it, just have a chat about the last few months and how everyone is. And yeah, so we're each going to host a session. So we have picked our themes for those sessions. So I'm going to go first because mine is actually the first of the 4 sessions. So mine is on Friday the 19th of June. It's at 8 o'clock in the evening. If you would like to come along to the session that I'm doing, just drop me an email or a direct message through Twitter at Chef Hopcast or beer at sheffieldhopcast.co.uk. We will come up with a better way of you being able to kind of reserve a spot, but I haven't done it yet, so I can't tell you what that is. But I can tell you what the theme is, and I spent a bit of time thinking about this, and I kind of thought with everything that's going on in the world right now, the theme that I've gone for is loud and proud. Now, let me explain what I mean by that, because it's partly about celebrating diversity. So, you know, whoever you are, whatever you do, whoever you love, be loud and be proud about it. So maybe a beer that kind of matches that, or a beer that in is itself quite, you know, diverse or, you know, kind of unique. Equally, of course, it could be an excuse to just go for a really big, loud dipper or, a huge imperial stout or just something with, a really mighty strong flavour. So you can interpret that theme however you want if you want to come along on Friday the 19th. But in fact, you could just pick any beer out of your fridge and just shout the name of it when I ask you what it is. That will be loud. So interpret the theme however you want. Loud and proud is my theme. If you want to come along Friday the 19th of June at 8 o'clock. Then on Saturday the 20th, we have 2 sessions, just like a real beer festival. It's almost like we planned this. So our early session, 6 o'clock, is with Laura.
Yay. I'm very excited. So that same weekend, I should have been in Amsterdam for the 3rd time attending Carnaval Brettanomyces, which is an absolutely outstanding sour and mixed fermentation celebration that takes place in multiple venues across Amsterdam. So I thought I'd bring a little bit of that home. So I've picked sours and mixed fermentation beer for mine, which also has the added bonus that I am married to and live with somebody who is quite familiar with those kinds of beers as well. So Jim will be on hand to help me out with that one as well. So yeah, if you fancy bringing anything on remotely on the kind of sour mixed ferm saison-y interesting yeast kind of spectrum, I'd love loads of you to join in.
That's really good. So is Jim actually going to join you on the session itself? Will we be able to fire questions at him and stuff like that?
I think if he's allowed, but he'd be very happy to be part of it. And yeah, if anybody wanted to ask him anything, that would be absolutely fine. I'm getting quite good at spelling things to do with mixed fermentation as well now, which is very difficult. So
that'll work really well on a podcast.
Laura's spelling bee. I don't want to put people off before they've even started up.
Brilliant. So that's 6 o'clock on Saturday the 20th. Then we've got to clear all the tables, give everything a good wipe down before the second session, which is at 8 o'clock, which will be hosted by Mr. Adam Nicholson.
Yeah. Initially, I thought everyone would kind of scream and try and claim IPAs, but no one did. But this will probably kind of fit into that session. So we're wondering whether it would be sort of sensible enough to sort of go for a strong beer theme. But we're going to stick with that. But we're going to say anything over sort of 6%. So we'll leave that up to you. I suppose that's people might snigger at 6% being strong, but it just leaves you with a bit of a cushion if the lockdown, it might be difficult to get something particularly unusual or strong. But yeah, so anything you want, if it's dark, IPA, Imperial, Impy Stout, just bring something interesting and strong. So anything over 6%.
So 6% plus. Will you be bringing a brewer along as well? Are you married to a brewer?
No, I'm not married to a brewer. Let's see what I can do, eh? There's still time. There's still time.
And then we wrap it up on Sunday, the 21st of June, which is another slightly earlier session, so 6 o'clock, which, well, I mean, he's the only one left. Who could it be? None other than Sean Beer Central Clark.
And I've gone with something that already exists to make it simpler for me to remember it, and that is Stout Sunday. So I'm not going to do any limits in terms of strength, but let's go big Stout. Come on. Sunday night, I mean, Sunday nights are not the same now, lockdown. You can have a lie-in Monday morning. Nobody gives a monkeys if you're not logged on by 9 o'clock. So let's go Stout Sunday, 6 o'clock, and drink some of the dark stuff. No Guinness allowed.
Okay, just for legal clarification, if you are working on Monday morning, we do not encourage excessive drinking on Sunday nights. Please do not contact your lawyers if you miss work on Monday. We accept no responsibility. Thank you. So that is the lineup. So Friday the 19th, 8 o'clock with me, Loud and Proud. Interpret it however you want. Saturday the 20th, early session, 6 o'clock with Laura, sours and mixed fermentations and anything along those kind of lines. Then it's 6% plus with Adam, Saturday evening session. So Saturday the 20th at 8 o'clock. And Sunday the 21st, rounding off the weekend with Sean at 6 o'clock. And it is Stout Sunday. Now, that's not to say, by the way, that it will just be each of us hosting those sessions on our own. It could be, hopefully all four of us will be at most of those sessions. Sean, obviously your shop will be reopened by then, so I think you'll struggle a little bit to get to one or two of those. And Adam, you've got kind of child to worry about, whereas I do nothing but just sit and drink beer, so I'll be at all four. So there we go. So yeah, if you want to come to any of those sessions,
I'll do my best.
The best thing to do is just drop us an email. A few people have done this week. beer@sheffieldhopcast.co.uk. We'll stick your name down, and all you need to do is just be on Zoom. That's it. There's no other expectation. Be on Zoom. You don't need to know a lot about beer. This is not a test. We're not after people to kind of show off their beer knowledge or anything like that. If you're a bit of a newbie with beer, maybe you've recently discovered the show during lockdown, wherever you are on your beer journey, it'd be great to have a mix of people to really kind of represent that stuff. And particularly Laura's session would be great if you're just kind of getting into sours. Jim's going to be on hand. You can ask questions and actually find out more about the beers, which would be absolutely tremendous. So beer@sheffieldhopcast.co.uk. Have we got anything else to talk about? Are we just about wraps up then?
Yes, we have, James. Yeah, women in beer. We've got two of the most prominent women in beer in Sheffield currently. So I want to ask Laura and Lucy, what is it like being a successful and a well-known woman in beer in Sheffield? How does it compare, perhaps, with other places in the UK? How does the UK compare for women in beer internationally? So none of us three would know. You two do know. So if it's all right, James, just to ask that question and get some ideas.
That's a very big question, Sean.
It is. I apologise. Yeah, so into three chunks, I suppose. So Sheffield, UK, world. What are your thoughts in that sense? Being a woman in beer.
I think it's quite interesting with myself and Lucy, because I'm not quite as public facing as Lucy is. Obviously, I'm brewery versus pub, general public kind of thing. But I think for me, as a woman who's always really enjoyed drinking beer and going to a pub, I've never really felt in Sheffield kind of threatened by that. It's something that I've always kind of just done and got on with. And I think it's possibly due to the places that I choose to drink in being generally very inclusive, lovely places. And the beer industry as a whole is, with other breweries and things like that, it's very unusual to find somebody that isn't welcoming who works in beer. So I think kind of internally within the industry, it's not something that I've ever found a difficult thing to be. It's something that I've just kind of done, which I know is quite a privileged position as well. I know there are other people that have found it much more difficult than myself, but it's just always been kind of a part of who I am, that I drink beer, I like beer, I talk about beer with anyone that'll listen, whoever they are. And I like to be able to kind of advocate that and spread the word. And I think in terms of holidays in America, where I think I mentioned the other week about Fort Collins, where there's so many breweries, it's untrue. And the whole dynamic there is about beer first. And people are sort of, people who are involved in beer are all there because of beer. So it doesn't matter what kind of person you are, as long as you are willing to embrace the beer. So it's sort of almost the flip side, I think, there. It's again really, really welcoming. So I think my experiences have been overwhelmingly positive, which is great. The representation of women is still really small. I think it is growing. And, the more of us that are willing to drink it, shout about it, talk about it, the better, really. So, sorry, that was very rambly, wasn't it?
No, it was a top answer, that. Come on, Lucy, you're under pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a little remiss to sort of say this, but because I don't want to make it seem like there aren't issues with any sort of minority groups in the beer industry or being a female in the beer industry, because the problems are there. But just from my personal experience, the improvement I've seen in the 10 years I've been working in beer has been astronomical. Part of that will be down to geography as well, because I started working somewhere else that's a lot more traditional, with a terrible reputation for a certain group of beer advocates, and then moving up to Sheffield. It is something that I do experience on a weekly, daily basis. You get people who look over your shoulder and ask a male bartender for a beer recommendation, or if I start talking about beer, they'll probably be trying to be nice, like, oh, you kind of know what you're on about, don't you? Like, it comes as a surprise. But the overwhelming impression that I get is that the progress is being made, and also my view on it is that we should celebrate that rather than hark on some of the problems that maybe will never change or maybe change in different ways. But for me, it's about celebrating what is happening. I mean, in Sheffield, you've got a load of the craft beer pubs or real ale pubs are run by women. You've got an amazing craft beer festival run by a woman as a place to be. And from my experience of, for example, Leeds and Manchester and Bristol, it's very much a similar thing. It's becoming less of an issue in certain areas, and I think that is something we should all be jumping up and down going, this is incredible. It's, yeah, the issues are there, but I think they're becoming more addressed, rather than maybe not solved, but definitely more addressed, and just less of a thing. Like, I did just tour the country and go to loads of breweries, and at no point did anyone go, oh, you're a female. Like, it's just not a thing anymore in certain bits of it. It's absolutely wonderful to see.
I was just wondering, this is not like I don't know. This is more of a question, but do you find that maybe, even though the numbers are quite low still, Laura, you mentioned they're quite low, do you feel like the roles within the beer industry are quite varied in a positive way, rather than we've got a few females, but they all just do admin or whatever? Like, it does feel from who I see and stuff that the roles of people with females in brewing just seems to be quite varied and all over the place in a good way. So maybe it's just the numbers are still quite low, but in terms of their influence, maybe within their old teams or their industry, it's possibly higher than other industries. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really know about comparisons with other industries and things, but I think definitely the varied level of involvement that women have at all different stages of beer is increasing. It is still, way less than 50%, but it is climbing, and I think it's that kind of perception shift. And I think what is good is that a lot of the women in the beer industry are willing to put themselves forward and talk about what they do, and really kind of embrace, educate and inform other people, and try and make it a more accessible environment for people, which I think kind of I would tie with what Lucy was saying, that there really is progress being made, and it's through talking about it and raising it, and sharing something like this that I'm drinking today. For somebody who was didn't really think they were into beer, this wouldn't taste like any kind of what they thought of as beer. Whether I'm kind of generalizing a little bit and saying, mainly women who might like cocktails or something like that, but the same goes for men as well. It's just the kind of the way that beer itself has grown and the flavors that you can find within it. Even between what the five of us are drinking today, there's they're not all what you would 15, 20 years ago have thought of was possible in a beer. And I think it's that kind of opening out of the product itself and making it more accessible and interesting for more people is one of the things that I think helps kind of move things along a little bit. You know, you can get a beer that tastes like anything, and I always say if you don't think you like beer, you just haven't found the right kind of beer. And if you're willing to kind of think around that and recommend things to people and find out what they do like, and a beer that might kind of tie in with that, it's so much easier to do at the moment. That beer as a whole, I think, is just becoming more welcoming and something that more and more people can come to enjoy.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. I used to work in at Walker Beer Co, where you guys came at one point, and our license terms meant we could only sell beer. We couldn't sell anything, like we couldn't sell cider, wine, nothing. And people would walk through the door into an establishment called Walker Beer Co and then be astonished that they couldn't get wine. And it became sort of almost like a personal mission. Like, I will find something you like. Like, oh no, I don't drink beer. Very much for me, like Laura says, it just means that you haven't maybe tried a beer that you would want. My best mate hates the taste of beer, can't even abide lager. 2 months ago, discovered sours. Absolutely loves them now. Like, can't get enough. So it's as beer itself becomes more accessible, I think some of the maybe more traditional issues that were in beer are becoming more easier to tackle and more open to change.
One thing I would like to point out, though, is that me and Lucy are talking here about all the different flavours and how varied beer can be. And I feel like we're possibly the two biggest mild and bitter fans in Sheffield.
Mild!
I bought a can of mild the other day, Lucy, and thought of you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Lucy, did you brew a mild? Did you brew a mild as part of your brew?
I did a marshmallow mild at North Riding.
All right, yeah, we've got that. So you brewed that, did you?
I brewed one incarnation of it. There's several brews of it, but one of them.
All right, yeah. I'm having one of those tomorrow night. I'm going to bring one of those home tomorrow night and drink it.
Excellent.
I did see that when you posted it, Sean, and thought, "Ooh, marshmallow," and then I was like, "Oh, mild." I'm never excited by that as a style. We've talked about this before, haven't we? About my just disinterest at milds.
Just haven't found the mild for you, James.
Probably true.
Do you like marshmallows, James?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of marshmallows, yeah. Marshmallow and a Bunsen.
If I'd known,
hours of fun.
If I'd realised that, and that is very remiss of me, but if I'd realised that Lucy had been involved on that particular beer, you could have had one of those instead. That would have been perfect.
But then I wouldn't have had a chance to wear the cap, so you know.
James, I'll post it tomorrow night and tell you what it tastes like. I'm very generous in that.
Look forward to it. Right, we're pretty much out of time. Brilliant kind of discussions and stuff. They're really interesting. We do still need to do our beer selfie picture, so we need to adopt our poses. I've not got any beer left, so it's a bottle only one for me. So cans and beers in the air. Just waiting for Adam. Or is he getting ready for his Barry White tribute? No, is that? And there we go. Job's a good one. Thank you all very much. Good to see everybody. And just that reminder, if you want to come along to the Sheffield Hop Fest, starts a week on Friday. That sounds really scary, doesn't it? That makes it sound like it's really soon. We've got to start getting ready for that. We need to order glasses, beer mats. No, we don't. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your company, and we'll be back next week. See you then. See you guys.
See you later.
See ya. Cheers, Lucy.